meeting of the cyber sessions is being recorded so that you all know. And I'm Rick Palazola, a member of the town's broadband committee. This is the first of several planned training sessions that we're organizing and hosting. We are recording these, and we are encouraging questions and answers. And we will post the video, the recording of this, through the town website. Details of that, I think, are not yet fully worked out, but that will come. Until June, we plan to hold these at 3 o'clock on the fourth Sunday of each month. Today's session is the first of 3 sessions planned for cybersecurity for all of us, and Diane Pacheco will be the presenter for those 3. The committee wishes to acknowledge and thank the Maine Community Foundation for their grant award supporting broadband literacy, the Jackson Laboratory for granting permission for Trenton resident Diane to lead these cybersecurity sessions for Trenton, and Diane for volunteering to take this on. The work of the Broadband Committee, which includes Saul Goodman, myself, Rick Palazola, Star Gilmartin, Mary and Jim Turner, Kristen Farley, John Whetstone, and our chairperson, Rachel Noble. And before I introduce Diane, I'd like to turn this over to Saul to share a few tips on Zoom meeting participation today.
Hi, thank you. I'm Saul Goldman. I know many of you have probably spent more than enough time on Zoom, but in case you haven't, just a little primer and also how we're going to do questions. Diane has asked whether, if you're able to, whether you could turn your video on. The way you do that is there'd be a button on the left of your screen, or if you go to participants from the bottom, and then if you see yourself, there'll be both your microphone and a video camera, and you can turn your video on that way as well, just so that Diane isn't faced with a long list of black and white names. Also, for most of Diane's presentation, we ask you to mute yourselves so that we don't hear your dog or your kids in the background, but there'll be time for questions. How do you mute yourself? Again, a button on the left, or by clicking on yourself in participants, or in the list of people. You can with those, there are three dots, and you can might be able to mute yourself there, but you can do it under participants or on the button on the left of your screen. If you don't like the name that you're carrying, you can also rename yourself. Again, if you go to participants and go to more, there's a rename function. Diane would really like this to be participatory, so she really wants people to ask questions. She's going to be showing us a bunch of slides. At the end of each slide, she'll be taking questions that you might have. How do you submit a question? Well, there'll be 2 basic ways. One is on the chat. So again, on the bottom of your screen, there's a chat. The normal, and you type your message in and then hit enter or return. That's how you submit a chat. The default is that it goes to everyone. If all you want is to make snarky remarks to one other person, you can choose to just talk to one other person, but the default is that your chat is seen by everybody. That's one way to ask questions. The other way is to raise your hand electronically. How do you do that? Well, again, on the bottom of your screen, there's a button called Reactions. If you press that button called Reactions, one of the options is Raise Hand. And so if you raise your hand, we'll be able to recognize that. It will highlight your square, like Hollywood squares. So we'll be able to see that you have a question for Diane. So there's chat, there's raising hand, and also if you want at the end of a slide, you could unmute yourself and just ask it directly to Diane. That Yeah, do you have any questions now about how to use Zoom? If I don't see anyone with questions, so I'll turn it back to Diane. Thank you.
Well, actually, I'm going to introduce Diane now. Diane Pacheco, town resident, is a certified information security manager and the chief information security officer at the Jackson Laboratory. She's responsible for the laboratory's IT security planning and implementation, keeping the enterprise protected from and responding to cyber threats in an ever increasingly environment. She's a 1985 graduate of UMaine and has been a Trenton resident since 1990 and an employee of the lab for about 33 years. She started out as a PC and Mac support technician. She developed the laboratory's quality IT support group, and through more than a decade of massive growth at the laboratory. She moved over to the cybersecurity role about a decade ago. And so Diane has lots of experience with this over many years. And that experience and her useful tips will be helpful to the rest of us. Diane, it's yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Rick, and thank you everyone for joining me on a Sunday afternoon. Fortunately, in winter, I'm tired of being outside today. Time to come inside and have just a little chat about some security topics. My goal for these sessions are really to help people get comfort in being more secure on the internet. And the way I want to start these sessions, and like Rick said earlier, I'm going to do 3 of these. The first one is to really understand kind of what's the most important thing that you have online is your identity and the things that make up your identity. And I'm going to actually, well, I think I'm going to advance my slides. Okay, there we go. Right, so I'm going to start with your identity and what is your identity and why hackers might be interested in your identity and things that you can do to keep your identity safe online. And then the next session will be about cell phone and computer security. So that's how you keep your guard up. And then the last session I'll do is really kind of in the more detail about email security and web browsing security. I think Saul introduced the Trenton Broadband Committee members. I want to thank them for the interest that they have in bringing broadband service to everyone in the town. Certainly from my perspective, I have the luxury of working from my home. And I think a lot of people enjoy using the internet and making sure that everyone has access to reliable internet service. It is important for town residents. So I appreciate all of the work that this committee does for all of us in Trenton. The last thing I want to say is while I am an employee of the Jackson Laboratory, all of the opinions that I am going to express today are mine and not those of my employer. So just wanted to make that clear. Okay, so security is a funny thing. It really is a balance and a personal choice between how convenient you want your life to be and how secure you want your life to be. And I can tell you, if you're super secure with your computer and everything, you probably have to take a lot of steps to kind of lock down your identity and your computer. And that might not be very convenient. And when things are not very convenient, people tend to sidestep security. So it's not right or wrong. It's a personal balance. So I'll have some opinions on how to set things up. My opinions are not 100% right. They're right for me. They're right for the way that I live my life. And other people might make other choices based on what you think is more important, convenience or security. So what is your identity? Your identity is really the things about you. It's your birthplace, your birth date, maybe the schools that you attended, things about you yourself. And I call this out here, those quizzes on Facebook that ask you, hey, who was your favorite teacher? What is your favorite dog? Those are not by accident. And a lot of times those questions and those little quizzes on Facebook really are an attempt to grab information about your identity. And unfortunately, to use that information in combination to potentially commit fraud against you. So it will be a theme in what I'm going to talk about is be very careful what information you share and how you share it and who you share it with, because it's those elements that could be used against you. Your online identity is a little bit different. It's the characteristics, not only as you as a person, but as you as an internet user, what websites you go to, what browsing habits you have, the idea that when you're on the web, there are cookies that will track your activities. And so your identity is you as a person, your online identity is you as a person, plus the way you behave on the internet. Anybody have any questions about that? Does that make sense? Okay, great. So some of the things that make up your identity, and these are the things that you really want to be careful about what you share. It's your home address, your telephone number, and your social security number. And I'm going to say this a couple of times about your social security number. One of the easiest ways for a hacker to get your social security number is simply to ask for it. If you get an email asking you for information, you don't need to reply with the information. And I'll go into more details in that on kind of the email and the web browser, but be careful who you're sharing this information with. If you go into a doctor's office and you're a new patient and you're filling out a form and it asks you for your social security number, you know, you don't have to provide it. And in fact, I would encourage you not to provide it. There are very few places where your social security number is mandatory for you to provide. A lot of it has to do with taxation and money. There are a lot of places that ask for your social security number. They really don't need it. And you should feel empowered to ask places like that, what are you going to use my social security number for? Do you really need it? And withhold it if it's not needed. Other parts of your identity are biometrics, your fingerprint. You know, if you've got a smartphone, to be able to unlock it, fingerprints are unique. Your medical records, your email addresses, credit cards, location services are an interesting element of your identity. And it's one of the things that get enabled a lot on cell phones. And when I talk about cell phones during the next session, I'll cover a little bit about location and why location matters and limiting sharing your location if it's not needed. Location is very convenient if you're checking the Weather Channel so that you do not have to type in your zip code over and over again. It just automatically detects that you're in Trenton, Maine and gives you the weather for Trenton, Maine. But there are times when your location is being tracked where maybe you want to turn location services off. And then things like driver's licenses or passport numbers. You want to be very careful, never email that type of information because email is like writing it on the back of a postcard and then just sending it out. Anybody have questions about kind of your identity and information? No. Okay. So why do hackers want this information? And all I can say is it's all about money. And they are extremely successful at it. The average annual income of a hacker is about $166,000 a year, and it doesn't take them very much to earn that amount of money. Hackers rarely get caught. You don't read a lot about hackers getting caught and going to jail and people getting their money back. Fraud is committed on a regular basis. Things that we see a lot are once a hacker has pieced together enough of your information, they will try and apply for loans in your name. They will create fake IDs with your name to be able to get services using your name and your identity. Apply for credit card numbers in your name, open up bank accounts. And I'm going to talk a lot about this in credit monitoring services and things that you should pay attention to so that this doesn't happen to you, or if it does, how to recover your identity. Hackers will send text messages, or there's this concept of smishing and vishing and phishing. Phishing is when a hacker sends you an email to try and get you to respond with some sensitive information. Smishing is when they send you text messages to try and get you to click on a link. And vishing is when they literally call you on the phone and try and get you to give information over the phone simply by asking. And I said it earlier, the easiest way for a hacker to get information from you is simply to ask for it. It doesn't take them anything to do it. And they're very successful with that technique. They can create fake social media accounts using your names. I think everybody has a Facebook account. You see it on Facebook all the time. You're friends with somebody and you get a friend request from that same person. Again, this is somebody just trying to take over their ID, get more people to be friends with them. They use that information to try and reach out to more people to get more information. And it's kind of like this self-propelling engine. And all they do is grab data and put data together. And once they put data together, they can actually use it to commit fraud against people. We saw this a lot last year, quite a bit across the state of Maine. And it wasn't really just Maine. There were a lot of fake unemployment benefit submissions with people's identities that were stolen. I want to say in this area, there were quite a few reports of fraudulent unemployment benefits that people should know that when you receive these notices, there are 800 numbers to call. You should Google those. You should look those up. You should never trust a notice that you get from someone and not double check that information yourself. So hackers are prolific. They make a lot of money doing this. They do not get caught or prosecuted. A lot of times they're out of the country. They're away from the long arm of the US judicial system. And so they're highly motivated. So the point of all of this is to make sure that you have the tools and know how to protect yourself. And once you know how to protect yourself, it just makes the internet a much safer place to be. Any questions on that?
I have a question.
Okay.
This is Rachel. Hi, Diane, thanks. So is there, you mentioned before that there's very limited places that need your Social Security account. And I was wondering, is there a resource that tells you like who needs these things and who doesn't? Because I get caught with that. I never know who really needs it and who might not need that information.
I have a link a little bit later about who can ask you for your social. I'll say it over and over again, I think the repetition is good, but you know, your social security number is like the keys to the kingdom. Once a hacker has your social security number, really, they can do a lot of damage with it. They can take out loans in your name. They can open up bank accounts. They can They can create fake IDs. They can do all kinds of crazy things, unemployment benefits. They can start drawing on your Social Security. So you want to, it's one of those pieces of information about you, you want to limit how many people have and whether or not it gets exposed through somebody else's kind of unfortunate breach of the information, right? Edna, a couple of years ago, had a breach. Banks have breaches all the time. Credit card companies have breaches all the time. A lot of times what will happen is you can share your last 4 digits of your social, not the whole number. And you'll see a lot of communications that will use the last 4 digits. They don't need the whole number for most cases. Again, it's mostly financially driven.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay, so here's some really concrete steps about things that you should be doing to protect your identity. And I'm going to take my time and kind of walk through all of them and why each one of them is important. So the first one is to use long and unique passwords. Hackers are great on cracking passwords, and I've got a screen later that shows about kind of the length and complexity of a password and how long it takes to crack those. But once your password has been compromised, and we saw this with LinkedIn with a lot of professional people. They use the same password with LinkedIn that they used with their bank account or their credit card account. And the whole reason why you use unique passwords for each one of your services is if your password is compromised, they only get access to the information on one particular site or with one particular bank. They don't get everything. If you use the same password for everything and your account is compromised, I guarantee you any hacker is going to go, okay, where else can I use this ID and password, and what else can I get access to that I could probably get more money from this individual? So if you have, one password for main savings and a different password for your Social Security and a different password for kind of your government sites, passport information, it makes it that much harder to completely compromise your identity. The second thing I want to talk about is setting up multi-factor authentication. A lot of banks already make this mandatory. Multi-factor is when you go to log into a site and you actually get a prompt on your phone or a phone call or something that it says, wait a minute, somebody's trying to log into your site. Is it you? And the chances that somebody would have your ID and your password plus your phone are pretty slim. And so multi-factor authentication is like one of the critical tools people have for protecting their identity. You should be setting it up with your banks, your credit card, all of your social media, any place where you have an account where you log into. And I've got a screen on this in a minute to kind of show you where to find that information. You should set up multi-factor authentication. The second place to be careful of is to freeze your credit if you don't need it. So if you're not normally taking out a loan or applying for a new credit card, one of the things that you can do is to freeze your credit. So if a hacker does get your information and they try and take out a loan or get money in your name, because your credit is frozen, it will actually get blocked. And frankly, I have my credit frozen. I don't mind sharing this. 2 times last month, I got one letter from Bank of America. I got another letter from a bank in Massachusetts that people had tried to take out credit cards in my name. Somewhere along the line, they had enough information about me, but because my credit was frozen, the applications to take out credit in my name were denied. I found out because the bank sent me a letter in the mail saying your application had been declined. In both cases, I called the banks and let them know that they were fraudulent applications in my name. So if you can freeze your credit, do that to protect yourself. The last piece, the middle piece here, is to enroll in identity theft protection if you can. I'm in a position where I'm very visible. I'm targeted a lot. I've had my accounts through Hannaford, Home Depot, Aetna. I can't even count how many services where my information has been leaked completely out of my control. And so I have identity theft protection. I use a service called LifeLock. There are many, many, many services that do this that cost anything from a few dollars to a month to, you know, up to $100 a month. Again, it's personal choice. It's how much you want to protect. But those services monitor your identity online and let you know, hey, somebody tried to open up a credit in your name. We saw your name and your social security number on the dark web. They give you enough information and they work with you to reclaim your information to minimize having your identity stolen. I've said it here a few times. I'll continue to say it. Limit the information that you post online, especially in social media. You know, in the beginning of COVID, when people were getting vaccinations, people were taking, you know, pictures of their vaccination card that had all kinds of personal information on it. People going on trips, taking a picture of their passport, going, yay, I'm going on a trip, right? Your passport number is super sensitive. You want to be very, very, very careful how you share that information and who you're sharing that information with. And then the last piece here is to watch your accounts that maybe many people haven't set up yet, right? Social Security Administration. If you haven't claimed your account, claim your account and keep your eye on it. I know a gentleman that had not retired yet, wasn't really paying too much attention to his Social Security, was starting to get close to retirement age and discovered that someone had been drawing on his Social Security for a couple of years and it wasn't him. So you want to make sure that if you have not claimed your Social Security Administration account, claim that. There's another one from the US Postal Service called Informed Delivery. For people who get money in the mail, for people who get credit cards in the mail. This is the way to tell you a piece of mail is being delivered to your home and you can see it was delivered. And so if it's not there, you know that your mail has been taken and you can take action on it. There's a website called Stay Safe Online. They have a lot of information for people of all ages. They have sites specifically for children. They have sites for kind of older individuals, parents. They have sites for people that are planning on getting married and might become victims of fraud in the process of setting up a wedding. I think one of the things that we talked about, and I'm not sure who's going to do this, is to make sure that the URLs that are here get distributed. They'll certainly be part of the recording, but if somebody can put them in the chat, Rick, I don't know if you're going to do that or Saul is going to do that.
And I can't copy and paste from your shared screen.
Okay. So one of the things maybe we can share the URLs as part of kind of the video being posted.
Just retype this into the chat.
Yeah, just retype it, but exactly.
Okay. All
You can
right.
do it.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure there's a lot of information that's online about protecting your identity. I'm going to go on to the next slide, unless somebody has questions.
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, great.
You mentioned about the USPS informed delivery, but you didn't say, is that a good thing to use, or do you?
I would definitely, so I would claim that account to make sure somebody doesn't claim it for me.
Check it.
Thank you.
Okay. The other thing that's happened to a number of people locally that I am aware of is people have received a change of address notices that they did not fill out. And one of the reasons why hackers do that is they'll apply for a credit card in your name. They'll do a change of address so the credit card gets mailed to them, not to you. Your mail will get diverted for a period of time. When you fill out a change of address, what happens is the post service actually sends 2 notices, one to the new address and one to the old address. And when they send it to the old address, it's very clear. We received a change of address form for you. If you did not do that, there's an 800 number to report the fraud. And what they'll do is they'll take care of the legal side of somebody trying to change your address, but they'll stop the change of address. Okay, any other questions? Okay.
I had one.
Okay, go ahead.
I've heard of password apps that give you one password to basically give you access to all your passwords. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, it's a password vault. It's a password store, and I would absolutely recommend using one because it's a way that you can create a really long, complex master password. And these systems actually will auto-generate crazy long passwords for you, and you don't actually have to remember them. Don't ever forget your master password, though.
Right.
That's bad. That's bad. But I'll tell you, I do some work with some individuals from Department of Homeland Security and FBI and some of the work that they do, and they also recommend using password vaults. I mean, if you do a password manager, there are a lot of very common ones: 1Password, FirstPass, RoboForm. Again, they cost different amounts of money. They operate slightly differently. It gets into a little bit of personal preference of what people buy. And the most important thing about a password manager is that you find a password manager that is convenient and comfortable for you to use. So the way those work is when you're on a website, so you install the software, you have your master password that is used to control all of your password. When you go and log into the site, it will have an ID and it will have a password, and you'll have to type in your master password, but then it will auto-fill everything in for you from that point. You can put them on your computer, you can put them on your phone. They're just super convenient to work, to use, and your passwords are encrypted. So if something happens and hackers can't get those passwords. So I want to talk a little bit about password security and the length of passwords. There's a site called Information is Beautiful that has a screen on the most common passwords that people use. And it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's the top row of your keys. its password. You want to make sure that you are not ever using a password that's showing up on one of those common password sites, that you want to pick out something that's more unique and difficult to guess. So this little chart really says, if you are picking kind of a 3 to 10 character password that's only numbers or just upper and lower cases, chances are a hacker is going to be able to figure out your password pretty easily just using brute force tactics. And I will say a lot of hackers are not going to guess your password. They're going to use an application that's a password cracker, and literally they'll have your password cracked in minutes if you're not using long, strong passwords. So your password should always have a mix of upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols, and it should be at least 12 characters long. A 6-character long password really is not secure in this day and age. So the other thing I want to say is don't ever reuse a password. So if you have a password that's been compromised, you may or may not know it, right? There are a couple of parking apps that were compromised last summer. If you're using that same password for some of your other apps, and that password shows up on the dark web, hackers are just going to try and use it. It's why you don't reuse passwords. And if you haven't changed your passwords at any kind of regular interval, you should start changing your password at a regular interval, like every 90 days, every 180 days. You should not be keeping the same password forever. A regular scheduled change of password is a good security practice to have. Different passwords for each one of your accounts. I actually use multiple IDs and different passwords for all of my accounts. So if I log into one site, I am not Diane.Pacheco every place I log in. Sometimes I'm DPacheco, sometimes I'm some other name. I use different combinations of IDs and passwords. So if one of my accounts is compromised, they're not going to be able to get everything on me. Long passwords. I'm going to talk about passphrases in a minute. If you don't have a password app, ways that you can pick a password that are easy to remember, long and super complex. Don't ever put personal information in a password like your birth date or part of your social security number. That's not a good password, right? And so using a password manager, which is what I have here, password one, LastPass, RoboForm. There are dozens of these. These are some of the common ones. If you write down your password because you cannot remember it, it should be written down in a place that only you have access to. And if that piece of paper disappears, you know it's missing. Does that make sense? Mm. Okay. I'm not saying don't write your password down. I can't remember everything myself, but that piece of paper must be secure. And if it goes missing, you must know that it's missing so you can change your passwords. Any questions on this? Okay. Next one, creating a long, strong password or passphrase. So pick a sentence, and it's because I do not like winter that this is my example. Winter lasts roughly 6 months, followed by 1 month of mud season, then black fly season, and finally 2 days of summer. That's my phrase. That's what I can remember. Boy, can I remember that. So then you start replacing some of your words with symbols. Winter lasts approximately 6 months, followed by 1 month of mud season, then black fly season, and finally 2 days of summer, using the ampersand for the A. And And then finally, only take the first letter of every word. So you have upper and lower. You substitute some numbers for letters. So 1 for an I, a 0 for an O, a 3 for an E. And you come up with kind of a very long, complex password. And you can do this by randomly selecting 3 things, right? So I have earbuds, I have phone, and I have blue stickies right here. My password could be earbuds, phone, blue stickies, and use upper and lowercase letters, change some numbers for letters, put in some punctuation. That is a way to make an easy to remember password if you look around your environment and you're always seeing the same things. I know somebody that says 3 dogs is too many is one of his passwords, right? He kind of spells that out. Does that make sense on a way to pick a password? Long, strong, complex, easy to remember. It's a trick that we've used for a long time. Okay. Okay, so multi-factor authentication. This is, I have my ID, I have my password, and now I'm gonna need something else to log into an account. And one of the things like Facebook will do this, if you log in from a different device, it will send you a reminder and say, hey, somebody on a different web browser or somebody from a different computer just logged into your account. Type in the code, respond to the prompt. A lot of times the settings to get to multi-factor, no matter if it's your bank or your credit card or your social media, you'll have some icon that will be your profile. And then there will be settings. It will either say security or privacy. And then from there, you'll see a setting that says security and login, or multi-factor authentication, or 2-factor authentication. They all pretty much follow the same path. So that once you have that turned on, you need your ID, you need your password, and you probably don't want your phone too far away or you're not going to be able to log in. Does that make sense? Any questions? Everybody have multi-factor set up on all your social media accounts? Do it tonight. Do it tonight. Set it up. Okay, managing your credit and setting up spending alerts. I love this. My husband doesn't because we share a credit card. So this is one of the ways that you can keep track of whether or not somebody has compromised your accounts, right? So freezing your credits again, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion all have their own method for freezing your accounts. There's a freeze and then there's an unfreeze. Once you've frozen your credit, nobody can take out credit in your name. They can't go into TJ Maxx and open up a credit card. They can't go into a bank and open up an account. It gets stopped once your credit is frozen. You need to be really careful when you freeze your credit. You remember how to unfreeze it. There are websites that you can go to. There are 800 numbers that you can call. They will have to validate your ID to be able to unfreeze credit. So if you've forgotten, you froze your credit and you want to go and open up a credit card at TJ Maxx, you will not be able to do that until you unfreeze your credit. It only matters in that particular case. It does matter if a hacker does get enough information about you to be able to try and open up accounts in your name. This is one of the major pieces of protection that you have from a financial perspective. And then most credit card companies will give you alerts if any spending is happening. So I have all of my credit cards that if anything is purchased for more than $1, I'm not kidding, I'm crazy like that, I actually get a text message on my phone that says somebody's spending money on your credit. If I didn't just buy something, I literally go in and I look at what was purchased. Sometimes it's my husband that's purchasing. He doesn't like it that I see that, but it's just one way to keep track. You know who I'm talking about, Rick, right? Right. It's just one way to keep track of your finances. Again, remember, hackers are financially motivated, and anything that they can do, if they can buy stuff and have it shipped to them, and they're long gone, it goes to a mailbox, it goes to a post office box. There's no reclaiming it after that. Just take advantage of all of the tools that you have for managing your credit and the spending of your money. Any questions on that?
John, can you, yeah. So I have a question. Or do you need, oh, okay, good. Do you need to freeze your credit on Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, or does it, if you freeze on one, does it freeze on all of them?
Nope, each one is individual and you must do all three.
And then if you unfroze your credit, you would have to unfreeze it on all three?
Well, so let me give you an example. 2 years ago, I bought a vehicle. When I was buying the vehicle, in order to get financing, they only checked the Experian credit bureau. So I only had to unfreeze that one credit bureau. And I literally sat in the dealership and I unfroze my credit and I waited and I said, do you have what you need? You do. And I froze it right back again.
Can I ask another question about that?
Absolutely.
So this is something I don't understand. If you freeze your credit, what credit you already have, like the credit card you already have, you can still
have a good time with that. Have a good time with that, right? So I have credit cards with, you know, a limit. It doesn't stop me from using the credit I have already applied for and been granted. What it does stop is anybody taking out any new credit.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Of all of the things today, if you don't have your credit frozen, this is one of the things that you absolutely should do. Long passwords freeze your credit. I could get on a soapbox on just those two things.
I had a question about my bank. When I log on to my bank account online, it makes me go through like a series of questions, but it doesn't have like a multi-factor authentic, whatever it was you said, a multi-factor authentication or whatever. It just asked me like what's my mother's middle name and things like that. And I was wondering if that is effective enough, or do I have to also have this multi-factor authentication?
So those questions, this is such a great question, right? So I would say, how many of the questions that you have at your bank have the answers been provided on a Facebook quiz? Right. So this is one of the problems with the questions that some of these places ask for. You know, what street did you grow up on? What was the name of your favorite pet? Who was your second grade teacher? Well, God, I can't remember my second grade teacher's name. Come on, people, give me, right? So the question has to be a question that you actually can remember the answer to. And it's got to be a question that the answer can't be easily found by Googling or looking at something. Hey, what was your father's middle name? Oh my God, I've got your name. I can Google your family tree and figure out what your father's middle name is. So would I consider that question and that answer like good security? somebody who was motivated could figure out the answers to those questions. If you have a choice of questions, I would pick the harder ones, the ones that the answers are not easily found. And I would protect the answers to those questions. What's your favorite food? Pizza? No, that's not a good question.
But what about the multi-factor authorization you were just talking about? I have never.
If they have that, I would use that.
But if they don't, I guess there's.
In lieu of that, you know, are they trying to make it more secure by forcing you to answer security questions? Yes. It's not just a password. You have to take multiple steps. Again, the questions that you pick and the answers that you provide are the key to how safe that is.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one more, and it may be a further bigger topic, but the difference between like logging on a computer and apps, I've noticed like the banking apps are really only asking for a 4-digit code to get in. And is that because it's on my phone? And is that safe enough?
We're going to have fun talking about cell phone security and the things that you should have on your cell phone. One, and I'll just say some of this stuff now and I'll say it again. Your phone should be encrypted. If you lose your phone, having your phone encrypted makes it like a brick. Unless you have the information to get on the phone, the information cannot be getting off the phone. That's number one. Number two, the apps are encrypted, sending and receiving and storing on your phone. They're way more secure than email. And depending upon how you have your web browser set up, they're probably more secure than a web browser.
Great, thank you very much.
It's why a lot of places go to mobile apps, because you can, and here's the kicker, you got to be careful where you get your apps from. You should only download apps from kind of the authorized stores, right? So the iPhone, go to the App Store, and the Google stuff goes to the Play Store. And you really should only ever get apps from those places. If you're browsing the web and you get a pop-up and say, download this app, I would not download an app that way. I would literally go to the store and do a search for the app and download the app. That way, both Apple and Google do a validation process of the apps. Some crappy apps get posted. They're generally found out pretty quickly and then get taken down. But if you are getting apps not from the store, there's no validation of whether or not those apps are secure.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go to the next one. Identity theft and monitoring protection, right? So I talked about this earlier. I use the service LifeLock. There are a lot of different services. I have a Discover card for free as part of my Discover card. I get a report every month that says, we've been looking at the dark web for your information, and we have not seen any information on the dark web. You know, the convenience and security thing. Am I trusting that Discover has my social security number and that they are scouring the dark web for my social security number every month? Or am I a little freaked out that they have my social security number and they're looking at the dark web for my social security number? For me, I appreciate the service, and so I kind of lean this way. There are some people that would not use the service because they're uncomfortable with it or untrusting. Again, it's a personal choice. I use the service because I find value in it. Does that make sense? State of Maine, you are entitled to get free copies of your credit report. And this is another thing that you can do to find out whether or not someone has taken out credit in your name. That without getting into identity management services, you can ask for your free credit report. There's a link here. You fill it in and they mail it to you. And when you get that credit report, you just want to look at your credit history and make sure that there are no unusual accounts opened in your name. This is another great way to be able to track what's going on with your financial security, the financial part of your identity. I talked about this earlier, kind of the change of address form from Postal Service. There's an 800 hotline that if you do get a change of address form and you were not the one that filled it out, that you can call them and report it as fraudulent. Any questions on that? Okay, important accounts to watch. I talked about this earlier. The Social Security Administration, if you have not claimed your account, go in and claim your account. You don't want somebody creating the account with your information and being able to watch that information. And then again, the informed delivery from United States Postal Service, especially if you're, you're receiving Social Security benefits, or you've applied for a credit card and you're expecting the credit card to be delivered in the mail, or you're expecting something of value to be delivered. This is a way for you to actually keep track of what's hitting your mailbox and making sure it's you that's picking it up and not someone else. I watch the Facebook Trenton page, and I see every once in a while, hey, I'm missing stuff. Did somebody get my stuff by accident? I love that part of our community. That we all take care of each other, but this is a way that you can keep track of stuff on your own. Any questions on that? Nope. Oh, privacy notes. Oh. When people sign up for accounts online, with every single account online that you sign up for, there's terms of use and privacy statements. And there's that little checkbox that says, I agree or I accept. And a lot of people do not read what they're agreeing to or accepting. And all I can tell you is danger, Will Robinson, danger. When you're signing up for services, when you're telling the service, you can have access to my microphone, you can have access to my camera, you can have access to all of my information and my email address. You really need to be clear on what they're going to do with that information. There are a lot of reputable companies out there that will tell you, we're not going to sell your information. We have this information to deliver a service to you. There are some places that literally within their privacy statements will say, we're going to sell your email address to every third party in the world willing to buy it. And that's when you end up with lots and lots and lots of spam, is you've signed up for something and your information has been sold to someone else. Be careful what you share on social media. People don't realize this. You spend a lot of time setting up your privacy settings in Facebook. Only my friends can see the information I post. What you don't see is if your friend shares your information and you've allowed them, then you have no control over what their settings are or how many people they're sharing information with. And it can go out further and further and further from there. So it's why we say over and over and over again, especially with the social media, be careful what you put out there and what people can see, and the people who can see it, what they can do with it and what it can be done from there. Privacy statements are not easy to read. People don't like to read them. It's another one of those, hey, this is really convenient. I'm going to use this service. oh, to be more secure, I'm going to have to read this really lengthy privacy policy. I don't really want to read this. Well, that's your choice. The devil is in the details with these. And all I can tell you is just be careful with social media and what you put out there and what you're agreeing to when you click that little button. Questions on that? No questions. Okay.
Go.
Okay, so protecting your online, I've said it a couple of times, just limit what you share over and over and over again. I can't say it enough. You don't know how far information would go on. Say no to Facebook quizzes. They're fun, but they give away a lot of information that might be the answers to your security questions. They're designed to show people a little bit too much about you as an individual, about your identity. Nobody's insulted when you don't do them, by the way. You just don't do them. Just be careful. Rachel, you asked earlier, who can ask for your social security number is this link. It's a lawyer firm, Identity Hawk, who can lawfully request my social security number.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions on that? Okay, so even when you're careful, things can happen. And I think kind of one of my final points here is what to do if you are the victim of identity theft. There are a number of sites that are designed to help you. The Federal Trade Commission and the FBI both have excellent sites for reporting identity theft and for recovering your identity. The site identitytheft.gov, you go in, you report your identity was stolen, you provide information and they give you a step-by-step recovery plan. And then you just start putting your plan into action. And then finally, there are a number of resources out there. Stay Safe Online, the USA Gov identity theft site, identitytheft.gov, and the internetsociety.org all have excellent information on security and securing your identity online. And that is the end of my presentation, and I'd be happy to stick around if people have questions.
I just want to jump in. Oh, go for it, Dan.
Hey, so in the past, you know, I've had something happen where somebody buys something or whatever through the bank, and I report it, and it's like corrected pretty quickly, and you know, they give me my money back or whatever. But what are and I've heard about other worse stories, like people stealing people's tax returns and other things.
Mm-hmm.
But what are kind of the worst case scenarios? You know, because that was pretty easy, but it sounds like there's other times when it's not so easy.
Oh, worst case scenario.
Well, like you're talking about a plan, you know, you go in and report it to the FBI and you put in this plan in place to like get your stuff back together, but
not everybody gets their money back.
Okay.
Not everybody gets their money back. Sometimes loans are taken out in people's names and money is handed to the wrong person, and you become liable if you don't have the right protections in place for paying back that loan. That's the worst case. That's a bad scenario.
Okay, so not all the banks or places like that will fix that for you, I guess.
Not all.
Okay.
Not all. You know, sometimes it creates massive inconvenience. I know a number of people that have gone to file their taxes only to find out that someone has filed a fraudulent tax return.
Right.
You end up having to work with the IRS to correct that. There's a form, and I can't remember the name of the form, but there's a way that you can request a very specific form from the IRS that you have to have a PIN to file your taxes going forward to stop identity theft with tax returns. And I want to say they might have changed that rule in the last year or two. But when you use that mechanism, you can't file an electronic return. You have to do it the old-fashioned paper way. Again, some of the worst case scenario is the effort you have to go through to reclaim your identity and your good credit.
Gotcha. And one other question I had was, I heard recently you were talking about privacy and people selling stuff to third parties and stuff. I heard recently, maybe last year or two, that Apple products, they put in this thing where you can turn off that feature where they won't do that.
So God love the Europeans. There is a privacy law in the EU called Gdpr that kind of has taken a lot of these data aggregators and collectors of personal information because it's a regulation that has a lot of teeth that you need to have there's very specific guidelines about what information that you can collect on people and how you can use it. And I'll say kind of the Googles and the Amazons of the world were kind of the intended target of some of these because people were feeling pretty abused that their information was being sold and they were being targeted. And there are hefty penalties, and you'll notice it starting to creep out more and more. When you go to a website, you'll get a prompt that says, this website uses cookies. And it will say, either you can accept all the cookies, or you could learn more about the cookies. And there are generally 3 different types of cookies, and I'll cover this when I do web browsing, but it's a good kind of answer to this question too. You have essential cookies that are needed for kind of the website to operate. Then there are analytic cookies that let the website developer know more about your habits. And then there are tracking cookies, which are kind of like the evil empire of, no, I really don't want tracking cookies turned on. More and more because of GDPR, and California has another privacy law, CPA. I'm saying the acronym wrong. It's the California Privacy Act. New York has New York Shield. That more and more states are pulling up with privacy legislation. So you're seeing this really start coming into kind of business and business operations where people can specifically opt out of their information being shared. It's not happening by default in the US yet, but I'm certainly seeing more and more of it, right? I shop on, Wayfair. I can go in and change my settings and say, don't sell my information, don't mail me, opt me out of all of these things. I would be careful about kind of how you unsubscribe from some of those lists. I would never respond to a specific email. I would go to the website and do it through my account. That's a safer way to do it. But absolutely, any place where you can nail down and limit the information that they're using and sharing, I would do that.
Thank you.
And bring attention to her question.
Diane, we got a chat question from someone.
Okay.
Recently, I applied for an Airbnb rental. I was asked by Airbnb for my license front and back. As long as I initiated this, I should feel safe, correct?
And Elise, if you want to unmute and add more information, you can unmute as well.
Okay. I've just unmuted. What more information do you need?
You didn't email it, did you?
Yes.
So.
Is there another way to do it?
So there are all kinds of ways to do things like that now.
Here.
There are data sharing apps that are encrypted in transit and encrypted at rest. When you email information, it's like writing it on a postcard. Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. So all I will say is I would go in your sent email and I would remove that message from your sent messages so it's not sitting there. I would ask the company that the place that you sent it to please delete it once they've processed it. And I would say going forward, I would very specifically ask them for a secure way to send it. And if they say email it, say, email isn't secure. Do you have a Dropbox or a Box account that I can put a copy in? That's a better way to do it.
Thank you.
On that same, is texting things like, or WhatsApp, you know, I know that I text my husband like, oh yeah, you forgot this thing for the kids, you know, is.
So
you
it
know,
depends on what you're texting, right? So there's
vaccine cards, just for example.
right. So WhatsApp, it's another one of those. It's an app that's encrypted, but it's also an app that's owned by Facebook. And I love Facebook. I have Facebook accounts. I have WhatsApp accounts. I talk to my brother in Spain on WhatsApp all the time. I don't put any confidential information in there.
Okay. And
I would never
texting is
put
the same.
I would never put a social security number in a text message, like confidential information in text. Mm-mm,
Okay.
I wouldn't do that.
Okay.
It's okay to say, hey, can you pick up a quart of milk?
Yeah. You know, I think we're at time, but one, I want to thank you so much, Diane, for your time. I also want to let everybody who's on know that this is just one of a series. We will be posting like we said, we've set a schedule and we will be posting that and publicizing that as well as we are going to try to post these online so people can watch them or rewatch them at their leisure. I know that I'm going to. And I also want to say a big thank you. This was made possible by a grant from the Maine Community Foundation, and they've been a very generous supporter of everything that's made the broadband activities possible in this time. But mostly, Diane, thank you for sharing your time and your expertise with us. I don't know if you have a couple more minutes, but if people had closing questions, I wanted to get that in before we shut that down, because from all of us, we are so appreciative.
That's the whole point, is if you have a question, please let me answer it for you.
Yeah. Do you have anything more?
Okay.
I think, yeah, not seeing any. Thank you. Thank you for everyone who's attending. Please tell your friends and neighbors. Again, we have